YouTube.
This is Steve Asherbrenner for the Talk of San Diego, and I'm here with
Carol Taylor, one of the founding members of the Long Beach Company of Steampunks and Neo-Victorians, along with Willa Quincy Taylor.
Awesome. Now I'm here in the exhibit area, and what do you have here in your exhibit area?
Well, this is our Maker's Room showcasing the LBC of SNV's productions, what we perform, how we work, and some of the great things that we've made.
Awesome. Where shall we start? What do you want to show us?
Let's start with one of our original talking boards. So the Long Beach Company of Steampunks and Neo-Victorians takes much of its practices from early Victorians, starting in 1831 and moving up into 1901. What we have here is one of our original talking boards. Most people today think of them as Ouijas, not realizing Ouija was actually coined in 1882 by Morton E. Converse. This is a traditional style talking board, and this particular one actually includes a pendulum cradle. Most people think of Ouijas or talking boards working with a planchette, a device you put your hands on. This style actually uses a pendulum that starts in full swing. As the pendulum is swinging, you begin to ask your questions just like you would with any other talking board, and the pendulum might move or change directions to better or to a message it might be spelling out. Bells, of course, will accompany it for yes or no answers. On this particular talking board, you can see that we have it surrounded by many personal effects, and we have a woman's authentic vertebrae in the center, hoping that we might get some activity in the room.
Awesome. Now, where do we go from here?
So from here, we're doing a series of panels and lectures this weekend at Gaslight Gathering. We're talking about spiritualism, the rise and fall of. We're talking not just about actually making contact with spirits, but we're talking about some of the great entertainers of spiritualism, one of which was Mina Crandon. Most people are not familiar with her name, but they are when they realize she was the arch nemesis to Harry Houdini. Today we actually have some of our favorite goodies. We have an original Martin E. Converse board. Not a lot of people realize this was actually the original Ouija board. He coined the term Ouija. This particular board dates back to 1886. One of the things Martin E. Converse wanted to do was he wanted a pocket Ouija in the home of every American. Kind of the idea of everyone should have a pocket Bible. He felt it was a religious, spiritual tool. But later on the scene, as people are familiar with the glow-in-the-dark Ouijas, or Ouijas they grew up with in the 60s and 70s, like the one you see here, you'll see it's not a Converse. It's a William Fold. William Fold felt that this was something he could make a penny on, and he was absolutely right. He marketed it as a toy by 1912, created the patent for it, and actually was able to buy out Converse with a new patent for the term Ouija. Wow. So most people today, when they think of a Ouija board, they're actually buying a government-issued toy because you could put a toy tax on Ouijas that you couldn't do as a religious or spiritual tool. So that's one of the things we talk about is the evolution of the talking board and how it went from a spiritual tool actually to a mainstream toy.
Wow.
Another thing that we love to talk about is the founding mother of spiritualism, Madame Blavatsky. Some people are familiar with her, some not so much, but she actually wrote, she founded the Theosophical Society in 1875, and from there she went on to publish a series of books, very detailing and explaining what to expect on the other side, what the other side might include, and how we can contact the other side. So Madame Blavatsky is another great, important person in spiritualism that we're doing lectures on this weekend.
Cool.
Many other parts of spiritualism was actually the entertainment side in America where it took off. Many mediums felt that they needed more gimmicks in their routine to get people in either the ambiance or the mood to be a little pre-spooked out to speak to the spirits. And one of the things they loved to do was include live animals in their seances and in their their particular chapters of communicating with the other side. And what they would do is they would actually be inspired and take from voodoo practice. Many people are familiar with Marie Laveau, but they're not actually familiar with what voodoo and hoodoo are. Voodoo is an established religion starting in Haiti and moving towards the Americas, specifically in Louisiana. What they would do is they would worship a particular liwa, or spirit, named Le Grande Zambe. The name actually traces back to Marie Laveau, as they believe her personal snakes were named Le Grande Zambe. And so American spiritualists would catch on to this. Unfortunately, today we know it as a cultural appropriation, but as a way to kind of jumpstart the idea of spiritualism as an entertainment form, kind of like magicians, they would start incorporating Voodooan snake dances into many of their routines, and it eventually later on became an official part of spiritualism practice. So we have some of those friends to share with people that have come to the convention this weekend. And then, of course, I mentioned Mina Crandon. Mina Crandon was Houdini's arch nemesis. Most people remember Houdini as a great magician, and they don't realize that that only was the first half of his life's career. The second half of his career was debunking spiritualists. He was very devoted to his mother. When she passed away, he had a very rough time. A good friend of his, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a devout spiritualist, wanted to offer his friend Houdini some help. He told him that his wife, Lady Doyle, was a great medium and could contact his wife for him, but she made some very critical mistakes. Houdini's family came from Germany. His father was a rabbi. His mother was very devout to her Judaism. When Lady Doyle contacted her with an automatic writer, that would be a planchette with a writing device in it where you could literally write out the message yourself as opposed to just using a board.
Wow.
Part of the problem was Lady Doyle spoke in perfect English as she was writing the letter from his German-only speaking mother, and she ended it with "Jesus loved him." For a Jewish family, this was a pretty big faux pas.
Yeah.
So this really infuriated Houdini, and he began his never-ending war on spiritualism. Eventually, he came head-to-head with Mina Crandon, who was absolutely determined, if not to turn him away, to just humiliate him and really irritate him.
Oh, wow.
He would start infiltrating some of her famous seances by coming in disguise. She was very clever. She knew he was coming on a weekly basis to her seances, so she got really nasty. One of her favorite things to do was to incorporate animals a little bit spookier than snakes.
Ooh.
She would incorporate live scorpions, tarantulas, and any other creepy crawly thing you could honestly think of. And she was a roaming medium. So most mediums, when you think of them, they'll sit down at a table, they'll conduct the seance, speak to the spirits, other people are welcome to ask a question, but they're generally seated. Mina Crandon was really a showgirl kind of attitude about it, and she would walk around the room, she'd hide many things on her body, and as she'd get closer to where Houdini was sitting, she would crouch really low, close to him, and she'd oftentimes spit things out of her mouth.
Wow.
And freak them out. But it's a very disturbing concept that you're in the middle of what you're thinking to talking to spirits, and someone comes right up close to you and spits or projects a live, pretty irritated animal out of their mouth at you. And that was one of the many tricks that she loved to pull with Houdini.
Wow. Spooky.
So one of the other things that we love to talk about is actual Victorian mourning culture. All across Europe, everyone knew that when Prince Albert died, the husband of Queen Victoria, she went into a Great Depression, and she actually launched the fashion movement known as the mourning movement. Mourning clothes existed before that, but they never had the etiquette or extreme rules or fashion jumps predating Queen Victoria. She went from having a mourning period of 2 years all the way up to a lifetime. She never left her mourning costume. She actually increased over time. In early Victorian days, before Albert died, it was the idea that you would be in full mourning, go to half mourning, and eventually completely leave your mourning status within a 2-year time frame. She did it her whole life, and everyone started doing the same thing. The idea was what the queen was wearing was what the elite were wearing, and you wanted to be one of the elite. Mourning fashion went from a way to show respect for the dead, for a way to show off your ultimate status, a way to show off how much money you made, and a general way to show off what designers were in the area and what you could showcase. She also started a huge fad in mourning hair jewelry. She had hair jewelry made of many members of her staff, not just the royal family. Hair jewelry existed before that, but it never reached the popularity it did until Queen Victoria. One of the things I have here from 1862 is a Victorian hair bracelet. This bracelet is made out of human hair. It goes through a weave process and 2 wax processes. So all the hair is real human hair. They braid it, wax it, braid it again into the final pattern, wax over it, and then you'll see in the center it has a 26 karat gold locket, and in the center of the locket you'll actually see a post-mortem photo. The woman in the photo is deceased. A huge part of Victorian mourning culture was the post-mortem photography. Photography was incredibly expensive as it was a new thing onto the market, beginning with daguerreotypes, moving to ambrotypes, and eventually tintypes, which is what most people are familiar with, before the paper photo. Because it was so expensive, you would typically wait for someone to die to take a family photo or a portrait, as it would be the only documentation you ever had of that person. Many family photos with very young infants in them, often the infant is deceased. You typically wouldn't want a picture of an infant if you weren't a very exuberantly wealthy family and could take multiple photos, specifically because you knew you'd never have another opportunity. That's one of our favorite pieces. And then, of course, the last thing we love to talk about with Long Beach Company of Steampunks and Neo-Victorians is taxidermy. It's one of our all-time favorite topics. I would love to point out a particular picture to you. It's a woman in a cat hat. Taxidermy has existed long before the Victorians, but they took it to a whole new level. They wanted to taxidermy not just things that they hunted, but their own pets. Taxidermy was a huge part of gift giving. If your wife was waiting and ready to have a child, it was very common to present her with the foot of a deer or a fox or something you hunted that would become a sewing cushion. When a father would leave to go on a long business trip, it was a very popular idea to bring his first daughter a doll from the exotic place he visited. As dolls were typically porcelain or a thin wood during that time frame, it was very common for a child to love that doll so much, a hand or a foot would pop off, so they would replace it. Sorry. They would replace it with a foot of something that the father had hunted. This doll is a new doll. It's one of the LBC of S&V original art dolls. We're trying to bring back the fad of taxidermy, but this doll would be a great example. As you can see, she has 2 coyote feet. She has skunk hands, but her head is an original porcelain doll made in Germany in about the 1890s. So this would be an example of what a small child would have had. The Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. actually has several examples of dolls that have up to 6 animals being used on them at one time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it significant to have different types of animals?
There's many different reasons. Your father could have just been a really prolific hunter. It may be that your father or brother or whoever was the giver of the doll was a great traveler. During that time period, many men from England were moving to India as soldiers. So you got into more exotic animals, and that also became another status symbol. If my child has not just a red fox foot, but perhaps a monkey paw of some species or something that would be an obvious sign that they went to a very far away place, it would be another status symbol.
Wow. That's cool.
Thank you for joining me.
Close it. Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for showing us the exhibit, and appreciate the appearance here at this convention.
Thank you so much. We love being here, and we're so happy we're the guests of honor at this year's Gaslight Gathering.
Awesome.
Close it.